Greetings from the tavern, everybody, and it's time for round number 2. My name is Fr0zen, and I am joined by Brian Kibler, and together we're going to bring you guys the second round of Swiss action here in the America's Spring Playoffs, where the field is already starting to take shape. Some storylines we want to drive home are some of the favorites, of course, winning, and some of the people who are not doing as well. We're going to focus round number 2 on Fr0zen versus Damon, another clash between North and South America. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, Fr0zen, a player who got second place in the most recent championship in the Bahamas. So in some cases, you see players who come from a top finish like that. For instance, Stanadachi, just last week. He ended up falling 0-2 in the first 2 rounds. You know, the winner of that championship. Will Fr0zen have the same fate befall him, or will he be able to battle back through the lower bracket?
That's right, and he's also got some interesting deck lists. If you take a look on your screen, what these guys brought. Damon seemed to have played a lineup that actually succeeded very well last week. We have a lot of similarities to Colento's lineup, who was able to get second in the Europe Spring Playoffs. You look at Fr0zen, he's got the very new and shiny Evolved Shaman. That thing has been rising up the ranks in terms of what people have been playing. I'm really curious to see how it works out.
Yeah, the Evolved Shaman is a deck that kind of burst onto the ladder in the past week or so. A lot of players, I believe, are crediting Noblord with the, well, evolution of that Evolved deck. And it's a very powerful deck, but it's not clear exactly where it fits into the metagame. We were talking a little bit earlier, it's not clear what exactly Fr0zen's lineup is trying to do here.
Yeah, it seems to be kind of a stretch of some things that are good against aggro and some things that are good against control and some things that are good against mid-range decks. Specifically, I'm looking at how Fr0zen only has one good performing deck in this head-to-head. He's got Secret Mage, which is great against the Quest Rogue and the Quest Warrior, and it's also good against the Jade Druid. But if Damon just bans that, then Fr0zen's kind of, swimming in shallow water here. He doesn't really have much room to work with look, if you look at Quest Warrior, for example, his best matchup against Damon's lineup is the mirror for his Quest Warrior. Everything else, Quest Rogue, mid-range Murloc Paladin, and Jade Druid all struggle against it. I think he's heavily unfavored at this point.
Yeah, it does not look like, on paper at least, things are likely to go his way. Damon's lists, though, we said, very, very similar to those we saw Colento play just last week. To the point that he even has Colento's Battle Rage tech in his Taunt Warrior deck. One of the things we've seen in the Taunt Warrior matchups, they are very often, especially the mirror matches, come down to who can just dig and find that quest first, find enough taunts to actually enable Sulfuras. So it'll be interesting, if that is his best matchup, is it even a good matchup in the mirror, because he doesn't have that tech either.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a tech that I've played with a lot personally. I actually liked it a lot because one of the things you do run into, especially if you're playing Armor Smiths, is just lack of quest completion. How frustrating is it to be 5 out of 7, and even if you just manage to get one of the draws, you need Stonehill Defender as one of your best draws in that position. A little more about Damon. This guy is kind of a man of mystery. He actually even refuses to tell us what he actually does for a living. He just said that he is an employee somewhere. So he's a little bit shy, but hopefully we get to know him a little bit better throughout this series. And we're going to start things off with Rogue versus Shaman. And, we're kind of actually talking about this. This is almost the matchup that we expected to start things off here, primarily because Quest Rogue is pretty much favored against the entire lineup of what Fr0zen's doing. But Fr0zen does have opportunity to kind of pressure here. This deck does have a lot of explosive openings and possibilities to flood the board very fast.
Yeah, so we see the Doppelgangster in Fr0zen's hand. That's one of the key cards in this deck's powerful late game. Its late game being essentially evolving a board of Doppelgangster. It has a ton of cards that produce multiple minions for a single card. We see the Bloodcell Corsair bring up patches on turn 1, as well as the Primal Fin Totem in the hand, which continuously spawns 1/1 Murlocs. So this is looking to either build a big board with Evolve or build a big board and then just blow you up with Bloodlust. It even plays 2 copies of that card.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it's just 2x2s all the way through. Some interesting cards, of course, that stand out to me are things like Stonehill Defender as well. It's very peculiar to see some of these slower cards in that deck list. But of course, the list is constantly adapting to the meta, which is really cool. And if you guys watched last week's Spring Playoffs, you may have seen RDU qualify with a list similar to this. So I'm curious to see how well it's going to do this week. And Fr0zen's always one of those players on the cutting edge of bringing wild decks. He even going back to last year's last call, he brought an anti-control warrior lineup, bringing control priest at a time when priest was considered unplayable, almost similar to warlock right now.
Yeah, it is always interesting to see players who bring decks that are a little bit off the beaten path in terms of what you expect from the metagame. this has had a very significant impact on ladder. This deck has really shot up in terms of its representation and its success in sort of high legend. And it is a bit different than the deck that RDU played last week. RDU's deck was more aggro shaman, aggro token shaman.
Weapons hitting face.
Exactly. This is much more focused on just building that big board, and does play a bit defensively in some matchups. It has 2 copies of Devolve, as well as the Stonehill Defenders you mentioned, that can give it more of a long game plan alongside the Doppelgangster Evolve.
Certainly. So taking a look at how the hands have shaped up here, looks like Fr0zen kind of stuck in a kind of an awkward position where he has to go a little off curve here no matter what he does. And Damon's got some really powerful stuff. He's got like his prep Vanish coming up here. So how do you feel like the hands are going to play out from this point forward?
Well, Fr0zen really needs to be aggressive in this matchup because he can't go with the build a big board with Doppelgangster and Evolve because of the threat of Vanish. Vanish is a huge problem when you're trying to establish significant threat in the board. So Fr0zen needs to try to use his resources to threaten Damon with the potential of Bloodlust just being lethal at any moment, rather than go in sort of on a big board with a bunch of his resources like the Evolve. So Damon, on his side, needs to be respecting that Bloodlust at every opportunity, while trying to build toward his actual quest completion himself.
That's right, that's right. And he hasn't actually gotten started at all. He's just been taking it slow. Very common for the quest rogue to play the quest, dagger up on 2, and even take it slower from this point on. They might, take it really easy and draw some cards with Novice Engineer and bounce, or even just save the bounce for a better opportunity, because part of the problem with Novice Engineer completing the quest is it might be a little too slow sometimes.
Or if you have a full hand, you burn your quest.
Or if you have a full hand, you burn your quest, which sounds ridiculous, but we have seen it on televised
at high-level play.
At high-level play. The winter champion himself, Standard Dachi, has actually burned it as recently as last week.
Yeah, but here, Damon wants to use his weapon if he can to remove some of these. The Stoneclaw Totem from Fr0zen, putting a pretty big damper in that and allowing Damon to, or preventing Damon from getting to those Murlocs. He doesn't want to, let Fr0zen build up a big board and get damage in if he can. That said, he can't really afford to use a lot of his resources before Fr0zen is actually getting to the point where he is threatening that Bloodlust. He wants to, try to whittle things down if he can without using, his Chargers or his Vanish itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it looks like Fr0zen stuck on yet a little tricky turn. Jade Claws sets up a pretty nice weapon clear, so he doesn't have to soften his board up. But it's not like the rogue these days are running Fan of Knives. That's like that they've been cut a long time ago. Although I bet Damon wish he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Fr0zen does end up taking his time a lot on some of these complicated turns. You got a chance to sit down and talk exactly why he does that.
Like, I get that a lot of the people who play this game 8 or 9 hours a day, have a lot of experience, and already seen every single situation pop up a bunch of times, but it's still nice to consider your options in some of your tougher turns, just to make sure that you're not making any mistakes.
All right, well, Fr0zen definitely a thinker. He's always contemplating every single possibility. Even just listening to him talk about some of those plays in his other team tournaments where you hear the communication lines. It's very insightful. Yeah,
he's a player who very often will suggest plays that are really really unusual, really kind of counterintuitive to the average Hearthstone player that sometimes are totally outrageous and don't work, but sometimes are also just very, very insightful and things that other people just wouldn't have thought of that end up being extremely effective.
Yeah.
Here he is just trying to get in as much damage as he can with the Flame Tongue that turn, pushing the extra 4. This does mean, because he's overloaded thanks to Jade Claws, there's no threat of Bloodlust next turn. So normally going into turn 5, this sort of board would be terrifying. But it's still pretty scary, but Damon can pick it apart one by one rather than having to kind of pull the panic button on Vanish and deal with all of it, because a Bloodlust would just kill him.
Yeah, and it would be kind of a funny situation if Vanish came out, that Fr0zen would get 7 minions back and he would have to mill his next card, and hopefully for his sake it's not Bloodlust. But Damon, of course, needs to survive. Looks like he's pelting the preparation.
Maybe doing it anyway,
right now.
Like going ahead and by doing this, he gets the patches in his hand along with the South Sea. Gets a Evolve is a pretty significant burn.
Yeah, considering that one Vanish already was used just now.
This does mean that Fr0zen, is much less likely to have the threat of a Vanish. He knows there's only 2 copies of Vanish in the deck, so if he does have the opportunity to rebuild his board, he can be at least somewhat assured that it's more likely to be stable. That said, he knows there's South Sea deckhand and patches in the hand, so there's the threat of his minions getting removed via charge. So I expect that there's a decent chance that he just puts down as much stable stuff, things that have higher health, to keep them from dying to the chargers and the dagger he knows are coming.
Yeah, possibly. Does that mean he wants to play the Taunt Totem, or he wants to play another minion instead? He needs to be very careful with how he sets up the board, because he needs some things to stick so that things like Flame Tongue Totem can actually threaten his opponent's board too. And Damon, of course, has pretty much revealed that he wants to start balancing his South Sea deckhand as a follow-up. Either that or save it for follow-up removal. And he's got some pretty solid minions too in his hand too. Tar Creeper will take a lot of effort for the Shaman to clear it without things like the Jade Lightning. Might force Fr0zen to use the Vault.
Fr0zen does have the Flame Tongue in his hand, so he has the ability to punch through a powerful taunt. I'm actually somewhat curious by the decision to play the Stoneclaw, because Fr0zen could have played a Firefly. He knows there's the South Sea deckhand in hand, and he also knows that Damon has kind of committed to using a bounce effect to potentially complete his quest with the deckhand. So the Stoneclaw Totem just gets attacked by deckhand, killed for free, then bounced and replayed, and potentially killing the totem as well. He could have played, say, Firefly here, which wouldn't offer the 2 free possible kills with the deckhand plus bounce. Although he'd have to have Shadow Step specifically because of the mana. Thanks to the fact that the Bloodsail Corsair did kill the weapon. Oh, he does with the coin as well.
Yeah, so I guess in this case, I think maybe Fr0zen just wanted to force Damon into a specific line to kill the totem, because that would commit all of his mana, and he'd have to have the specific combo cards. And Primal Fin Totem, the more it summons, the more you get value off of it. So it looks like, yeah, Fr0zen's just forcing Damon to commit to his resources at the moment. Oh, he's kind of running out of time here. Oh, he's running. Okay, so it looks like he's just going to Shadow Step it back to safety. Thankfully, got that off. It looked like he was not able to get it just in time. And Fr0zen will be able to use the Primal Fin Totem for at least another turn here.
Yeah, now Damon has access, because of that Shadow Step, he has access to double Charger plus a completed quest next turn. So the patches plus the South Sea will be able to come down as 5/5 Chargers after he plays the free deckhand to complete the quest. And now Fr0zen is in a pretty awkward spot in terms of actually being able to put enough pressure on, because he does not have access to Bloodlust, even if he were to build a big board.
Yeah, so now maybe start asking your question, if I'm even gonna bother trying to play board control at all. Maybe I just need to start rushing my opponent and hope that I can draw really powerful things like Bloodlust or Jade Lightning to finish the game, but I don't even know if it gets you there. Your opponent's still at 15.
Yeah, I think that Fr0zen's best bet here may just be to kill the Ferryman to prevent it from being yet another 5/5 on the board with the damage he has available, and then just play out as much as he can. Kind of just hope to draw Bloodlust, because if he just plays a full board here, and even if Damon is able to get down a bunch of Chargers, Bloodlust is still a huge threat. Damon does have access to Tar Creepers, but he can't actually play, and the Bileflame Tidehunter, but can't actually play them alongside the quest this turn unless he finds a preparation.
Yeah, Fr0zen, of course, playing, and then Jade Golem 1/1 kind of forgot that the Primal Fin Totem was actually going to summon Warlock anyways. But it doesn't really matter, because the point is that Fr0zen really needs to get any kind of semblance of board, because I don't know if Damon can kill him in 2 turns guaranteed. But, Damon's going to be worried about that Bloodlust as well, so he has to be really cautious. Weigh the balance of how much he trades onto the board versus can he play around Bloodlust and threaten 2-turn lethal here.
There's actually an interesting possible option for Damon as well. He could just play his 2 Tar Creepers if he wanted to this turn, to give him some defensive measure against the Bloodlust, rather than playing the Crystal Core and playing the Chargers. Because if he does just play the 2 Tar Creepers, then he's giving himself 10 health versus the possible Bloodlust burst.
Right, and he knows also that Flame Tongue's in the hand, so maybe he's thinking about combinations with Flame Tongue. Let's say he removes 3 minions off the board. There's still 4 that sticks. Yep. Flame Tongue adds 5 power plus other things that you might do, so he's at 14. It's a scary proposition. You might die.
Well, Fr0zen, that is a Stonehill Defender, not a Bloodlust. There is a Devolve here, which is potentially strong. Devolve actually completely loses all of its power once the Crystal Core has been played, because all of the minions are 5/5 no matter what. So Devolve just turns these into 2/2s, which conveniently actually lines up pretty poorly for Fr0zen. He still has to use a minion plus Flame Tongue or 2 minions to get through them.
Yeah, but they slide down, so the damage is still pushing the face. And this is the power of Flame Tongue Totem, because trades allow you to actually still get damage in.
And Fr0zen does have, he could play Flame Tongue as well as Stonehill Defender this turn, which would protect his board, notably his Flame Tongue Totem, from at least one charger. He knows that Patches is in the hand.
Right.
So that means that Damon potentially, can, if there's not another charger, can potentially only play Crystal Core and bump into the Stonehill, and not necessarily actually get the Flame Tongue in order to stop the damage. So here, it looks like Fr0zen is deciding, okay, I'm going to try to get this pressure in. He's not going to have much time for this Discover effect. And just quickly takes a hired gun.
Yeah, it takes the one with the most damage possible, assuming that that's going to be traded into. Damon, kind of put himself in this corner here because he chose to play the Tar Creepers and got punished for it by that Devolve. And this could be a big win for Fr0zen if Damon can't stabilize right here. He still has the ability to play Crystal Core
and 2 chargers. But that takes the Flame Tongue off the board, leaves only 3 damage immediately on the board.
That's within striking distance. Now Fr0zen has Jade Lightning possibility with the spell damage totem.
Yeah, there's a few possible outs here for Fr0zen. Jade Claws. It's not quite enough to just finish things off.
Yeah, but that kind of sets you up in a pretty good position to do it as well.
It certainly helps.
I'm kind of surprised that Damon took his time this much to the point where Fr0zen's able to kind of turn on the gas and now put Damon in a position where he might lose. And Rogue's not known for being able to come back from this position if they're just kind of be threatened for health. The one thing that is the case, though, is Damon does have the Bylefin Tidehunter, so that can set up a big wall of taunts, and Fr0zen might need direct damage to end the game now that he's lost his Flame Tongue Totem.
If Damon's able to find a bounce effect for his Bylefin Tidehunter, that could be extremely strong here. If he's able to find, he doesn't have quite enough damage to actually have real threat in terms of killing Fr0zen. There's just the 1/5/5 charge in play. Even like a Vanish would only deal a total of 10 damage with the the 5 damage already from the board. Yeah, now Fr0zen's just putting Damon down to just 5. Doppelgangster gives him a very, very large board. Another Tidehunter though.
Okay.
That is a big draw for Damon, because that means 2 5/5s as well as 2 5/5 taunts. So that is a lot of damage Fr0zen will need to get through in order to actually win this game.
So if he puts up 10 health worth of taunts, there is 6, 8, 10 damage onto the board. You can remove 2. So it would force Fr0zen to use everything, including the weapon, in order to get past the taunts. And if he uses his own face, you can set up lethal that way. So I think Damon's in a pretty good spot here if he just plays both of his Bylefin Tidehunters.
Yeah, I think Damon just plays his entire hand here.
And just daggers down to 1/1, trades into a 2/2, should be fine.
And now Fr0zen is the one who's going to need something off the top of his deck to get himself back into this.
Yeah, now Devolve actually isn't that of a questionable thing at this point, because you actually can get past the taunts that way.
It's true, yeah. If you do draw Devolve, you will leave 5/5 minions, but those 5/5 minions may not actually have taunt anymore. Bloodlust, though, that is exactly what Fr0zen needed. And it will be enough to bust through the taunts and bust up Damon's face in game 1.
Yeah, big win here, Fr0zen. I mean, the Evolved Shaman was probably one of his better decks. In fact, it was his best deck against the entire field of Damon's lineup. But the Quest Rogue was the one deck that Evolved Shaman was unfavored against. So now you can get that out of the way. He has an additional chance now for his Quest Warrior or his Jade Druid to get a win.
Yeah, so he's going to still have very much an uphill climb, because these are some decks that, as we said, Damon has a very strong lineup against.
Yeah, that's right. So Fr0zen definitely really happy with that first win. Of course, it's really cool to see some of these new meta decks still be able to thrive in an environment. Even though that was definitely a really close cut, that was a matchup that was unfavorable, and that Shaman has a lot of potential for future matchups as well.
Yeah, and we really saw, I think, a lot of the elements of what make that deck powerful. You know, the ability to go wide in the board so you're not stopped by any just individual threat. And obviously, Bloodlust, a deck that's creating so many minions, is just able to end almost any game out of nowhere.
True, true. And it definitely seems like Fr0zen's a little bit more at ease right now. Even just watching his game number 1, you can tell that he doesn't really have that much pressure on his shoulders, given that he's already qualified for the World Championship back in the winter season. So we got a chance to sit down and talk with him and just get into his mind for his mentality heading into spring.
Fr0zen has done it coming back from a huge deficit in a massively unfavorable position.
Qualifying for the World Championship was a huge relief because it allowed me to use the time I set aside for Hearthstone differently. The fact that like you don't really have to grind ladder, you don't really have to get points.
It's been a fantastic run for him.
I think now I could focus on like life. Maybe I could get a new hobby, like playing golf. It's probably not good for me in terms of knowing what's the best decks, best lineup, getting in fine-tuned with the meta, but maybe I'll come up with something that works again. I really want to make it to Shanghai because a lot of my family would be able to go there and watch.
That's right, Fr0zen's parents. Your son is the scariest thing in Hearthstone when he's playing well.
If my parents are going to come to the Heartlands, they're definitely going to come to Shanghai.
Fr0zen, one of the most storied players from Americas over the past couple of years, really starting to make his mark at the end of 2016 and now heading into 2017, already second place in the Hearthstone Winter Championship. And of course, fighting in this series. Now, if he gets eliminated here, and if you go down 0-2, it feels effectively like you're eliminated. There's like a 90+ chance that you're eliminated. But assuming that Fr0zen is eliminated from this series, he still goes to the World Championship. But like as he said, he's still as motivated to go to China just because, you know, his parents and his family are from China. In fact, Fr0zen's family has hosted Chinese tournament events for Hearthstone, so they definitely seem to be very passionate about the scene and everything that involved in it.
Yeah, hearing Fr0zen's story with regard to his parents and their support of his Hearthstone career is really great because he at one point had his parents telling him, well, you know, you got one more shot at this, you know, we'll help you fly to DreamHack, and you know, if you don't do well there, you know, you need to focus on something else, and well, he won. So
turns out
now they're very supportive, and like you mentioned, you know, his father even helps organize events in China. So definitely, you know, great family support story there.
All right, so going to game number 2, we have Quest Rogue versus Jade Druid. This is a pretty nasty matchup for the Druid if they're not able to get to a fast start. You need some really good tempo. Fr0zen even kept his Galaka Crawler. Now, he does have 2 of them in his deck. A little unusual for the Jade Druids because they usually don't acknowledge what other people are doing. They just care more about their own tempo and their own cards. Do you think it's going to be a factor in this matchup at all?
Well, a lot of the Quest Rogues have cut a lot of the early pirates. You used to see Swashbuckler in a lot of the Quest Rogue decks. Now you only really see the South Sea deck and in patches as possible targets for Galaka Crawler. So I'm a little curious as to that specific inclusion. A lot of people have been playing Tar Creeper as their defensive tool in these decks. So I'm curious both in terms of the thought process that led to Fr0zen including Galaka Crawler and to why he specifically chose to keep it in this matchup, especially considering he already had Wild Growth for a turn 2 play.
Well, Damon looks like he can complete the quest by turn 4, guaranteed.
Yeah, this is a gross draw from Damon here. He has all the tools he needs to really get going.
Yeah, the question is, how do you budget your resources? We've seen people stop bouncing the Firefly and start bouncing the Flame Elemental because it's just cheaper to complete the quest faster. But, you know, Damon could still take his time because it looks like the Druid still, at least Fr0zen's hand, is still rather pedestrian. It's not really going on a blister pace by setting up minions. Instead, it's going for, you know, removal-based tempo instead. Now, Damon looks like he's just going to bounce the Firefly anyways, wants to accumulate resources, and I think he should be good on the card count here. You know, one of the things you are worried about with Fireflies is that maybe you have too many cards and you're going to burn the quest, but it looks like he's going to be good.
There is quest completion, turn 3.
Yep.
and next turn he'll be able to just play that quest. And Fr0zen, he has the ability to remove, if he wants to remove, not quite all of this board. He could use all of his resources essentially to remove everything, including the Feral Rage and Wrath. He could actually just use the Feral Rage hero power, rather the Wrath hero power, and take all of them down. But then you're still just kind of playing against an insurmountable tide of 5/5s after that point. This is one of the reasons this matchup can be so difficult, because the Jade Druid isn't really putting pressure on. And he's gonna go ahead and cycles it.
No, that helps. So, that helps a lot.
It does, yeah. The Jade Blossom here will give him a little bit of a board presence. He's not taking down quite everything here. He's going to use the Innervate as well, the hero power. So he's leaving just one minion, I believe. Yeah, he would have had to use an additional resource or just full cast that Wrath in order to kill everything. But I think Fr0zen recognizes, okay, well, I can run the risk of leaving a minion up here to try and dig. I'm not really going to win if I just kill these things and then have to play against 5/5s eternally. He needs to actually get some resources of his own to accelerate his own game plan.
I mean, he's still in a bad spot.
Oh yeah, this is real.
He knows 6 out of the 8 cards or 9 cards that Damon has, because it's all Flame Elementals, the Coin, and Crystal Core. The patch is a little unfortunate for Damon, but everything else has just been gone flawlessly for him. When he plays this Crystal Core, he's gonna dominate the board, and Fr0zen has drawn the Curator. Okay,
that's a great draw.
Yeah.
That actually gives him a minion that survives an attack from a 5/5. So there's not just a single charger that can take it down, as well as finds a Primordial Drake, which is a substantial minion that's going to give him some actual impactful, proactive game plan here as well that can incidentally also defend him.
That's right, and Damon still can't get the guaranteed charge without daggering on the South Sea deckhand. So, maybe Fr0zen has an opportunity to set himself up here, but you can start to see where the Golakka Crawlers start coming together, but also kind of hurt his deck. He has Curator in it so that he can pull Golakka Crawler and the Primordial Drake, but as a result, he doesn't have anything substantial. In fact, if he had something else, he may be in a much better position.
Yeah, crucially, Damon knows those Golakka Crawlers are there. In particular, after the Curator, he knows the Curator fetched a Golakka Crawler.
Yeah.
So there's no incentive for Damon to play one of his Chargers here. Say Charger, Dagger, kill your Curator. He wants to save those Chargers for a point where Fr0zen has no opportunity to effectively Golakka Crawler them for value.
All right, well, Fr0zen has the Primordial Drake as the best possible minion this turn. And looks like he's just going to go for shutting down the Novice Engineer, so that way Damon doesn't have an opportunity to bounce that and draw. But Damon has Mimic Pod for follow-up draw, even if he needed it. How much damage can Damon generate right now? He can do 5 through the taunt, and then he can do 10. But he doesn't have the dagger charge, so it actually kind of compromises everything. So looks like he can't really do that much.
I think that we're just going to see Damon just building a big board again here. There's not a ton of incentive for him to just try and push for maximum damage. He could, patches the face, then bounce the patches this turn, not replay it, which is, I think we may very well see. This plays around the Golakka Crawlers from Fr0zen.
Yeah, I like that. And then Flame Elemental to wrap things up in a nice bow. Looks like Damon's contemplating if he wants a Hero Power Dagger as well to set up for the South Sea deckhand. Looks like he is.
Okay, well this line of play does leave him vulnerable to Golakka Crawler, actually removing his Chargers. He's not actually even going to bounce. Oh, he is. Okay, he is bouncing.
He's going to bounce one. Yeah, he's going to bounce one, right? Because he knows that Golakka Crawler exists.
Right, he knows that there's a Golakka Crawler in Fr0zen's hand. So this play leaves him with one Golakka Crawler, or one Pirate exposed to the Golakka Crawler. And if Fr0zen does use a Golakka Crawler, it also uses mana on this turn and prevents him from playing, for instance, the second Primordial Drake, which would be clearly his best way to stop this damage coming in. And now Fr0zen's kind of on a survival plan here, but Quest Rogue, when it's not under pressure here, is just so able to grind you out, even if you're an incredibly long game, effective deck like Jade Druid, simply because, and this is, I think, may just be lethal damage.
Yeah, when you got the bounce.
There it is.
And Fr0zen knows what it is. Like, the fact that the quest was completed so early, he would play it out just because he wants to see the end in case Damon had a fizzle, didn't really have much to follow up on it. But by all means, that game was very much over from the very beginning.
And that's one of the reasons that you see people playing Quest Rogue in a lot of these lineups. This lineup that Damon is playing, very similar to the one, as we mentioned, that Kalento played last week, very strong against other controlling lineups because of the strength of decks like Quest Rogue and his own Jade Druid deck.
Absolutely. So Damon comes in here and evens up the series, and a very good win for him. But we're kind of expecting him to be able to be a favorite in this series, primarily because his lineup is very strong, and once again, it resembles the lineup that Kalento played the previous week. Here's a couple stats on Damon. Looks like his best win rate is actually with Quest Rogue. Of course, 74 games, he's able to nail 63.5%. And it seems like he's got a really nice balance. He did well in the Copa America. He got top 8 in the Season 1 for this year. And of course, he's also done his due diligence of doing well on ladder, as well as getting points from Open Cups.
It's worth noting the win rates that we're showing for these players. These are all at high ranking. These are not their win rates, just climbing up to legend. This is against other strong players. So, that number may not stand out as, remarkable, but when you consider that's his win rate against other very strong players, it's much more impressive.
I mean, these days, 63.5%, based off the way the ladder has actually adjusted their matchmaking ratings, is still very good enough to climb to high legend.
Yes,
most players have reported that if you're at legend and you have a 60% win rate, you should be able to crack even top 10 because of the way skill MMR has actually been so closely adjusted to make sure to find the right opponent for you. So now worthy opponent actually really does have even more meaning for when the ticker lands on that right before the game.
Sometimes, though, you still play against Guac Boy.
Sometimes you still play against Guac Boys, the Roach Boys out there, building the pyramid. But a lot of times, you're still matched up against even opponents, which does make that 63.5% win rate very impressive from Damon. It's going to game number 3.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of even opponents, I think we're going to see a mirror match here in game number 3. Jade Druid versus Jade Druid is what they're queuing up with. We'll jump into the game in a moment.
Yeah, you can see that Fr0zen still dodging, playing his Quest Warrior. That is the deck that is the most vulnerable to Damon's lineup. As Fr0zen coming here as number 4 seed based off his points. Damon has double Jade Idol and Jade Blossom, so a lot of good ways to ramp it. Fr0zen's got double Jade Blossom and the Jade Spirit, and that means Fr0zen's going to get way ahead in mana crystals moving forward, and that's going to be really helpful for him when he hits his later minions. Oh, apologies there. The game screen wasn't actually live there. I was actually watching the pre-quote.
You just have
spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. This is
spoiler alert. Damon.
Like, how did you know? How did you know what they had before we even started the game?
Has only one Jade Blossom. It's the caster predictions, We're just on
caster vision.
Yeah, Fr0zen hitting these double Jade Blossoms is going to be brutal. Although, maybe he can just even play Jade Spirit. We'll see how he reacts to Damon's Jade Blossom here. But I have to imagine that getting mana crystals is a very effective, powerful tool here.
I think he may actually just play on curve this turn with the Jade Spirit, getting the extra body here, especially against an opponent who has played Jade into Jade as well. And now Fr0zen is ahead on the board. He still has the opportunity to Jade Blossom next turn. It's not like if he Jade Blossom this turn, he was going to play Auctioneer next turn with his ramp.
True that. But then now he also drawn Nourish, so maybe Jade Blossom ends up getting stranded. We'll see.
And Damon, though, he has a lot of ramp of his own, but it's the one-shot ramp, double Innervate here. Not quite the perfect opportunity for it. If he does Innervate, he's wasting a mana, but he can play Aya. There's an argument here that Damon could potentially just Innervate Aya and Jade Idol. This is his second Jade Idol, so he would run the risk of stranding his Auctioneer without powerful swing turns with multiple idols, and gives himself a finite number of actual threats. So he is looking like he's going to go with just the Aya, I think.
Yeah, this is actually a really important juncture of Damon's game.
Hovering over it for a second.
Yeah, because a lot of times the matchup doesn't become about infinite Jade Idols.
Right.
It actually becomes strictly about tempo onto the board. So playing this Jade Idol as a 4/4, 1-mana 4/4, might give you the swing, so that way you just end the game. You have cards like Wrath in your hand, and that's really powerful if you're pushing tempo already.
Yeah, I like this from Damon, and this is something that you actually very rarely see from players who are not very high caliber. The ability to kind of identify when they need to take the alternate tack of utilizing their second Jade Idol as just an immediate threat. Recognizing, okay, well, if we do play a very long game, yes, maybe I'm going to be unfavored. But also just looking at Damon's hand, he has just a Wrath and an Innervate. He needs to leverage the mana advantage he's able to get from that Innervate to pressure Fr0zen as quickly as possible. He doesn't have a Nourish. He doesn't have an Auctioneer. He wants to just go right now. So I think this is an absolutely heads-up play from Damon, putting Fr0zen in the spot.
Well, Fr0zen's favorite card in Druid, I believe, is Nourish, by the way, or Innervate. I think a combination of the both, and probably thinking about one ways he can use it. Instead, he's just using Jade Blossom because he's going to have to tack on additional damage here in some capacity. Oh man, it's a little tough too because he can't Hero Power and Earthen Scales. Would love to be able to distribute both, so that way he can clear almost everything else.
You see, pretty clear frustration or exasperation from Fr0zen here. He recognizes that, yeah, he's got a hand that's great in the long game, but Damon has really put him in the pinch here with as aggressive as he's using his resources.
Well, the good thing is that he has comeback potential if he's able to get out some of this Auctioneer stuff, but...
Earthen Scales is not what Damon wanted.
No, that's pretty bad. But he's still getting Wrath for a card. Draw and hopefully Innervate, pick up the rest. Wild Growth's also kind of dead here in this position.
That's kind of air for Damon here. He was very much looking to find a Nourish of his own, even just something that allows him to fight for the board. If he picked up a Feral Rage, if he picked up a Jade Spirit, something he could play to continue applying pressure here, or at least preventing Fr0zen's board from being able to deal with his pressure. Instead, the Wild Growth is about the worst card in his deck right now, and after expending a lot of resources to keep the pressure on Fr0zen, he's letting up this turn based on his draw, and that's really bad for him.
I mean, he's thinking about the merits of keeping Wild Growth for ability to draw a card. So, I mean, I wouldn't blame him, but at the same time, you gotta think about what's the possible scenarios that ends up happening here. The thing about Wild Growth versus not Wild Growthing his turn is that he also has Innervate in his hand, so he also could push out another minion. Say he gets the Primordial Drake next turn, he still could do that. So he ends up going for the Wild Growth because he feels like that Mana Crystals might be beneficial later on. But we'll see. And Fr0zen has to be extremely relieved to see that his opponent has such an awkward hand. He basically floated 6 mana.
Yeah. The only play being Cycle a Wrath that turn. And Fr0zen now, he has a lot of resources, but he needs to balance his resources that he has and his desire to dig for more with the time he has available, because Damon is clearly ahead in the board. Damon is going to be generating, I believe, a 5/5 Jade off of this Aya Blackpaw. I mean, there's even some argument to just get Mana Crystals from the Nourish, so he has the ability to play anything he does fine, but gonna go ahead and dig. Finds Drake, Wrath, Earthen Scales. The Wrath could be used to kill Aya, to at least get the front half gone.
Summons a 5/5 though.
It does. It doesn't actually do anything to the immediate board presence that's available. So Fr0zen decides that he's going to go ahead and Wild Growth himself to give as much mana as he has. Ooh, and that is a beautiful draw for Damon. Finds Nourish. So now going from very low on resources to that's actually kind of awkward, picking up both Auctioneers. He'd love to be able to continue the pressure here, say, Innervate out a Jade Spirit to keep that going, but Fr0zen is going to be able to answer next turn, potentially with a Primordial Drake, given the state of the game, and using your Innervate now, when you just drew 2 Auctioneers, gives up a massive ability for you to have a big Auctioneer swing turn to get your resources back in order.
Yeah, but you do set up a 5/5, and that means your Aya is ability to summon a 6/6, and it still puts out a lot of tempo on your side. It puts at 19 health. And assuming you're just going to put him at 14, that's not a trivial amount of damage at all.
It's not.
And Auctioneer still has the Earthen Scales as a way to draw a card, which is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. You also might be able to push extra tempo. I like getting minions onto the board here.
I don't disagree with this play at all. I just think that you specifically drew 2 cards that make you really want to save your Innervate, and the way that you've been playing this game and the rest of sort of the texture of what's going on makes you want to use your Innervate to play a card immediately, which definitely weakens those Auctioneers.
Well, now Fr0zen has the ability to play Primordial Drake and an Earthen Scales to clear at least with the 5/5 off. Not even popping the Aya might be beneficial for Fr0zen, so that way the Primordial Drake can live, at least based off what he sees. He has to be thinking about why did Damon think so long about innervating out the Jade Spirit? It almost would be not something worth thinking about. So I think Fr0zen can start pegging Damon maybe on Auctioneer. So he has to start wondering, can I play around that at all, or should I even just acknowledge that and just worry about the board?
Yeah, Fr0zen knows that Damon passed the previous turn with 2 cards in hand. He saw what one of those was the Innervate.
Right.
Fr0zen is a player who definitely pays a lot of attention to hand tracking, to identifying the cards and the position of the cards in opposing players' hands, and trying to deduce what that means those cards are likely to be. So I think that Earthen Scales is a card that he can easily deduce is likely to be in Damon's hand based on the previous turn.
Yeah.
And then the pause on playing the Innervate for the Jade Spirit is potentially a very likely Auctioneer as well, I think.
Yep. So Damon picks up Nourish, which is a little redundant to the Auctioneer. Auctioneer is actually just better tempo, straight up. You draw you draw 2 cards less, but you get a 4/4 onto the board immediately. With the upside of maybe hitting something else, 2 mana does give you availability of hitting some of your other spells. And Damon's going to weigh the cost here. The nice thing about Auctioneer Earthen Scale is that you actually get past this Primordial Drake without having a hero power.
Right. Yeah, there aren't really many things that Damon could find that would let him get by this more efficiently than the Earthen Scales. So even if he were to Nourish, there's a very good chance he casts the Earthen Scales this turn. So getting to cast the Earthen Scales and draw a card from it, I think is pretty clearly a more effective use of the card. Finds a Feral Rage, not enough mana to follow up with that, but is able to get some pressure on here, gets a 6/6, and is able to hero power the face. So Fr0zen getting pretty low here still, but he's going to have a relatively clean turn here. Actually, he can't quite get rid of the 6/6 and the Auctioneer.
Yeah, he might have to just let the 6/6 live if he wants to start drawing cards and playing his Jade Idol, but he can't have it both ways too. And the scary thing about Auctioneer is that it's not even guaranteed to hit anything really good too. So even if you Auctioneer and say Wrath, you're not gonna. What do you have to do after that? So Fr0zen's gonna draw cards with Nourish first. Oh,
Pocket Crawler.
little punishment there on the choice of tech. The Gorlaka Crawler is pretty useless in this matchup.
Yeah, but swipe plus Jade Idol does mean that he has a 5/5 against a damage 6/6, so at least represents the threat of trading here.
Right.
And
It also means that this is the second Jade Idol from Fr0zen too, so
true.
His Auctioneer into Innervate into the Jade Idols are not going to be a possibility for him to swing the board too, and he's going to be more reliant on the Jade Behemoths and the Jade Spirits.
Damon wants he can use Feral Rage hero power and take out this 5/5, and then just keep pressing the damage with his Jade Golem. Fr0zen's at 16, so there's also the possibility of just pushing some of this damage to face.
Yeah.
But that said, there's still the Earthen Scales remaining in Fr0zen's hand that Damon, he knows there's a lot of armor gain between Earthen Scales and the Feral Rages in Fr0zen's deck. So just pushing for damage and leaving big minions up can often spell disaster.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that your opponent can set up defenses. So if you just push for damage, and your opponent's holding so many cards, it is risky. But at the same time, I like saving things or pushing damage here, because you set up a 2-turn lethal. If Fr0zen doesn't have it, which he's only drawn 17 cards with his deck, then you win. Fr0zen does have a lot of defensive tools too, though, and he's got a lot of spells with Auctioneer. So I think we're in for a big turn here from Fr0zen.
He could potentially Auctioneer plus Innervate, swipe Wrath, or maybe throw in the Earthen Scales there to keep himself out of range of any kind of burn, rather than perhaps the Wrath. But if he did use the Wrath, if he didn't use the swipe and Wrath, he doesn't have the ability to actually clear off both minions. So he may need to fire that in as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's at 10, so the 9 is kind of the number of danger,
Right.
because they could double swipe hero power, or they could Feral Rage swipe hero power.
Yeah, the fact that both Innervates are gone means that the ceiling on damage that the Druid deck from Damon is capable of is effectively 9, as you mentioned.
I'm getting a little scared too, because if Fr0zen ends up going for an Auctioneer turn, he's lost half his turn already in terms of time, so he's gonna have to move fast. Chooses already to Wrath to start things off. And he's gonna Innervate. He's gotta go very quickly now. Okay. And he draws both of his innervates.
But not much time to see what he draws.
Wow, he actually goes for the Earthen Scales immediately. He picks up that Jade Spirit as well, and I feel like Fr0zen, because he was limited on time, ends up having to suboptimally use his Auctioneer turn. Obviously, you'd love to use your Innervate, your Wild Growths, or maybe even throwing the Galactic Call there on the board, but definitely the most mediocre of turns relative to the potential that Fr0zen had right there.
And Fr0zen is a player who, will often be very, very deliberate about his turns. We actually saw him at the championship, had spent a little bit too much time thinking about his turn, but didn't have the time to execute a turn. He actually had lethal damage with his Malygos combo deck.
That's right, multiple times that ended up happening. But he's able to bounce back and thus still able to get to the second place finish there. Pretty important, by the way, that Damon picked up a Jade as well, because now it's back in the seat. Oh, wow, Fr0zen picks up his second Auctioneer. And now he has to kind of think and evaluate right now, because he's only got 7 cards remaining, so he can pretty much draw almost the rest of his deck here.
He's very much under the gun, too, from that 7/7 Jade. His Jades are substantially smaller now. I believe this Jade was originally a 5/5, so Damon, continuing to play Jades will all be bigger than Fr0zen's, considering the way that this sort of has paced itself out. And Fr0zen does have Swipe and Feral Rage available as removal options, but none of them line up particularly cleanly against Damon's board. He could Swipe and Feral Rage into the 3/6, the Jade Behemoth, and then kill the damaged Jade Golem with his Jade Golem, but that's just seeding the turn back essentially.
Well, then he can innervate the Jade Spirit.
He can then use the Innervate and the Jade Spirit that does significantly downpower his Auctioneer for a later turn.
Yeah, I don't hate it.
Yeah, and I think he is going for this. Oh no, he's actually going to armor. Okay, and then set up for an Auctioneer turn the next turn. This is interesting, especially considering just how low Fr0zen is in his deck.
Yeah. And both these guys, I believe, have used both their Jade Idols.
Right.
So obviously they cared a lot about the board state, but they relatively at safe health right now for both of them. So now it's definitely become about how much value they can generate with their hands, given that they don't have much room left in their decks. They even picked up the Curator. What else are you going to draw with that? He has one Drake at least.
I believe Damon has not drawn either of his Primordial Drakes. I believe Damon has 2 Primordial Drakes remaining in his deck.
So I guess Damon's calculating that. Maybe he could access mana first, but maybe he doesn't want to draw too far because maybe the fatigue is starting to become an issue here because he knows that he's not going to win through the burst anymore. And he has a very good chance of losing the board if he just plays Curator and nothing else.
The menagerie is for guests only.
It looks like he's just going to go for a board clear in this position. Feral Rage down to 2/3. Oh, he's going all face. Wow, I kind of like what Damon's doing in these positions here. He's putting Fr0zen in really uncomfortable positions. But you got to wonder, is that a little too aggressive? It's a little too aggressive. Fr0zen has the second swipe here, which allows him to clear and play the Jade Behemoth. And once again, Fr0zen's in a position of dominant tempo.
Yeah, I don't really like the Feral Rage there to the face because it does leave your entire board vulnerable to being cleared by a single swipe. The swipe on the Curator means that the Jade Spirit can kill it, and then the 6/6 Jade trades with the 7/7 Jade. If he had removed the 2/3, that second trade would not be possible. And now, Damon is in a little bit of a rough spot behind these 2 minions, finds his own Jade Behemoth, but still, he could be in a much stronger position if he had just removed the Jade Spirit rather than pushing that damage to the face.
I'm kind of interested why Fr0zen didn't innervate out maybe the Galactic Crawl to help him give him some extra boost there. And I think maybe he's still saving the Gad Sand for some draws. But as far as we know, I believe the Jade Idols have been exhausted. So it could be a temporary brain fart here from Fr0zen. But we'll end up seeing because it could be the case that Fr0zen has another plan for this innervate with squeezing in powerful tempo play.
And now here this is, again, Damon's Jades are just a little bit bigger, and Fr0zen, he has to use his 7/7 to push through the Jade Behemoth here, and then has no real opportunities for kills with his Jade Behemoth.
Yeah. He does he have another Primordial Drake in his deck? I believe so.
I believe Fr0zen still has one Primordial Drake.
So he
remaining.
could
shake his head here. I think Fr0zen recognizes this is a pretty bad spot for him.
It's been a bad spot for the entire game. And he's looking more. He was talking about how relieved he is, but it doesn't seem like he's taking it easy in terms of game 3. It's starting to ramp up a lot in pressure.
There's his Aya.
Oh, that is pretty big, but he has to worry about survival.
Yeah, Fr0zen is at very, very low life right now. And he has expended most of his armor gain, if I recall correctly. I believe he's used the Feral Rage and one of his Earthen Skills, or perhaps even both.
Yes, yeah, both of them were used. He used it on Jade Spear to trade up.
Right, yeah,
and
very
used
early.
it
Yeah,
on,
he did use the first
Jade
one.
Golem to trade too. So his life gain opportunities are very slim. Damon picks up a Jade Blossom, which is, I guess, nice for a Jade later on, but now he's worried about the backswing too.
Right.
That's kind of what the Jade Druid matchup ends up becoming. It takes a while to get there, but once it starts hitting, it becomes a Transformer movie. It's just Jade Golems and other Jade Golems, and just a lot of grunts and explosions.
Well, the Primordial Drake plus hero power and his Fandral can take down the Behemoth, which could allow his Jade to connect to face if he so chooses. But that does leave him in a position where he's facing down 3 big minions and doesn't have the ability to clear them off. Ooh, okay, well.
Yeah, Jade Blossom helps him
into
draw. Scales, he has to kind of weigh if he wants to play it now versus later because of the threat of him drawing too deep into fatigue.
Right, and there's also, I believe, there's one Jade card remaining in Damon's deck. I think he has a Jade Spirit left. I believe he's played both Blossoms, both Behemoths.
All right, he's just gonna set up his Fandral and try to go for a proactive trade. He picks up a Swipe. So if he's able to stick a minion to the board, he could reasonably end the game. A Primordial Drake comes to the hand of Fr0zen. How does the trades work here?
Well, the Auctioneer is not really a threat now. Auctioneer is actually kind of a liability for Damon at this point.
Oh, yeah.
So given that there's no Jade Idols remaining in the deck, he could just use his minions to trade into the large Jades, play the Primordial Drake, and just leave up the Auctioneer. He could kill the Auctioneer with his Galactic Crawler, which does mean that it at least doesn't have the ability to attack into the Primordial Drake. So I think that we may just see kind of full trade here from Fr0zen, leaving himself with a 9/9 Jade against an empty board.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what you want to do. The Auctioneer will definitely trade first before anyways. Right. Given that you know that Damon still has 2 Primordial Drakes himself. And a Swipe remaining as well.
That turn from Damon, digging himself really deep into his deck, he didn't establish a super strong board. And now he only has 1 card left, so he's going to be at the risk of fatigue if somehow they're just in a stalemate position.
Yeah, and he's only got 1 more Jade card, you said, right?
The last card is Jade Spirit, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. But Jade Spirit is not going to be enough to withstand the pressure, and Fr0zen still has follow-up taunts. Now, what does Fr0zen have remaining in his deck?
Well, cards, for one.
Yes. Thank you, Brian Kibler. I believe 1 Galactic Crawler is still in the deck.
It's actually pretty crucial, though, because, Damon has a very significant health lead, but he's also going to be building up fatigue each turn. And he can play a 10/10 taunt here, or rather a 10/10 Jade without taunt. But that's all he can do. None of his other removal spells really line up against the minions that Fr0zen has in play.
Well, I think he has one Galactic Crawler he hasn't played, and I think he has a Fandral based off of kind of the notes I was taking.
He's 1 more Jade left, because all the Jades played, assuming no replays of Jade Idol, is 10/10.
Okay, so then if he has another Jade card, and assume it's a Jade Behemoth or something, then it's going to be very hard for Damon to win back the board here, assuming that Fr0zen can stabilize 1 time. Damon's going to play the Jade Spirit, because probably going to be harder to secure the Jade boards.
And the Behemoth is particularly important because it is a taunt. So that does mean that Damon's unable to actually either go face or actually get profitable trades with his larger Jade into the smaller Jades of Fr0zen.
And then
also makes a big Jade too.
Fr0zen still has Innervate too, so I wonder if he's just going to Innervate out his Gadget Stand for a 4/4. To get pressure onto the board. And, and that's his last spell in the deck, I think, if we were calculating correctly. And you might as well. I mean, Fr0zen saved the innervate because I think he thought about Jade Idol for a brief period of time and kind of realized he didn't. Damon's just going to concede.
That game was so back and forth. There was the one turn that Damon chose to go sort of in with his auctioneer, and he had. I'm trying to recreate the game state in my head and try and figure out, because I know that he had a couple of options for using removal that turn or playing. I believe it might have been a Drake that turn.
Are you talking about the turn that we just saw before Fr0zen played?
No, the final turn where he went in with his auctioneer, just played like 3 spells.
Okay. The Jade Blossom and the Earthen Scales.
And there was another option for him that turn, I believe, with removal that might have been able to get him more of sort of a foothold on the board.
Yeah, he had Feral Rage and he went face and he pushed damage. He kind of left that Jade Spirit, which conveniently left a swipe.
And I wonder if just like he had removed the Jade Spirit, does that game play out differently? Because he's able to protect his one big Jade that ultimately, whoever has the biggest Jade left is often ends up having the sort of trump position.
Right, and it's not just because you win the board that you're able to get the damage in. It's also because it snowballs. Because if one Jade survives, that means you can make sure that other Jades survive too, and then now you're building up snowball momentum. And if you're able to keep that up, your opponent will never catch up because they'll never get the good proactive trades, and everything will be at 3 to 4 health. And Druid can't really swipe clear things. They don't have strong, massive AOE. That's not what the class is known for. So it's always been a golden rule to fight for the board in the Jade Druid mirrors. Not going to be the case, though, and Fr0zen somehow finds himself in position on series point, on match point here. And I got to say, man, he's fought really valiantly, but it's definitely been kind of a rocky road to get to this point for both sides. Let's go to game number 4. We have Quest Warrior up against Jade Druid, a matchup that is going to be very tough once again for Fr0zen. I feel like I've been saying that all series long, and yeah, he's been able to pull through, so let's find out what happens.
Yep. This is the deck that we've been saying is likely to be the toughest matchup, the toughest to get a win with out of Fr0zen's entire lineup, because all of the decks from Damon's side are very powerful against the heavy control Taunt Warrior, which Fr0zen is playing. And this is a particularly tough matchup.
It is. I have seen the Quest Warriors pull it out from time to time, but it's far and few in between. Especially if Damon opens up with, double Jades with ramp, has an auctioneer in the hand. But we'll see. I mean, I've also seen Quest Warriors survive by the skin of their teeth. Their hero power just managed to go by all the Jades and just keep hitting Druid in the face and then burn them down for damage. Or even better yet, they win the board early on.
Yeah, the real key for the Taunt Warrior is to get that hero power online. This is a matchup that you cannot win via attrition in any meaningful way. The Druid has the ability to keep making bigger and bigger Jades, and the quest, the completion of that, gives you not only the ability to potentially interact with your opponent's even very large minions, but also just end the game via hitting them in the face.
Oh, interesting. One thing that could prevent Damon from being able to go off is if he's able to sabotage Damon's card draw sources by dirty ratting out the Gadsden Auctioneer. It's also a cheap taunt, which allows him to get the hero power faster.
It is, but Curator is so powerful in terms of accelerating you to your win condition of actually generating Sulfuros. And Fr0zen doesn't have enough taunts already in order to actually set up his quest win condition, so he does decide to take the Curator to accelerate him to that. There's also just the risk that
I can definitely see that. And of course, you can also pull some really bad stuff.
Right, there's a huge risk if you dirty rat and don't immediately have a brawl. And in many ways, your brawls are already quite pressured in this matchup, so you don't want to necessarily have to dirty rat in a brawl, because brawl is so powerful later on to just end the game with Sulfuros, even if your opponent makes a big board.
That is true. Fr0zen is going to be able to play the Ally Armorsmith. Damon's just going to clear the board. He's taking this very slow. Feeling very confident, just drawing a ton of cards. He's even saving the coin. Remember, he hero powered on 2 and Jade Blossom on 3 because he wants to save that coin with the Auctioneer. And we'll see if that ends up paying dividends off. But right now, Fr0zen's still working on that quest, 3 out of 7. But with still no Defender and the Curator and the Drake, that means he's pretty much guaranteed to finish the quest here this game.
Yeah, he has all of the actual taunts he needs. Damon already with 3 Jades off of this behemoth, has put an end to any of the attacking that Fr0zen is doing.
which sometimes becomes relevant. If Jade Druid doesn't really have any meaningful minions to stop the damage, then Taunt Warrior can start hero powering aggressively and put Druid down to the teens and then threaten to kill them in the next couple turns.
What now?
And I think that Fr0zen, Fr0zen's trying to evaluate, is it more valuable for me to Stonehill and potentially find something that fits into my curve of trying to complete the quest better, or do I want to just play the Ally Armorsmith here? Just goes with the solidest play on the board, which I think is generally the way that you want to navigate this matchup. You usually want to try to match your opponent as much as you can in terms of playing solid big minions in the middle turns of the game, because all you're trying to do is get to that quest and ultimately wear them down with the Ragnaros hero power.
Also solid meteor positioning.
It's true.
Damon gonna start using the Gassian Auctioneer and drawing a ton of cards, and he's gonna look for Jade Idol. That is one of the cards here, so Damon can go ahead and shuffle that immediately into his deck.
I don't know if that's what he's going with. He is going to go. Okay, he already played his first one.
Yeah.
So yeah, he is going to go ahead and shuffle. One thing that I've actually seen a number of players, sort of top players do that other players don't necessarily, is shuffling with your first Jade Idol in the Auctioneer chain. That's something that we saw Kalento do quite often last weekend in control matchups, just to guarantee you have a better chance to pick up additional copies of Jade Idol, which make your Auctioneer turn that much more powerful.
Yeah, it's very humorous how we've gone full circle where people used to shuffle Jade Idol on turn 1, and that was considered a very newbie thing to do, and now shuffling them early on is considered a pro player thing to do. I love how that happens. Dirty Rat here coming a little bit late, but we'll see what Fr0zen chooses to do here, because the threat's already immediately on board. He can't actually immediately deal with that Auctioneer.
Yeah, this is a tough position for Fr0zen, because that Auctioneer is protected by a big taunt. He doesn't have an Execute in his hand. He has no way to actually easily get through the Behemoth. Damon actually also spread out his Earthen Scales. He could have put both Earthen Scales on his Jade Behemoth to make it a little bit bigger. That would be worse against both an Execute as well as any Whirlwind effect. And Fr0zen is going to have to just leave up the Auctioneer for a turn, and that is potentially devastating. Damon gets an absolutely huge opportunity here if he can find some more cheap spells.
I guess the saving grace is that Damon already kind of has like a full hand.
It's true.
So perhaps Damon can't draw too many cards.
But I mean, the real saving grace for Fr0zen here is that Damon's hand is full of expensive minions. He only has 2 spells in his hand, and they cost 3 and 5 respectively. So he's not really going to have a great opportunity unless he draws into something to really take advantage of this Auctioneer. And he doesn't have many shots at it. He could Feral Rage here, start things off there, but then unless he draws basically Innervate or Jade Idol, he doesn't have the ability to continue chaining spells and develop his board in any meaningful way.
I mean, he does have a huge chunk of spells that he could hit. He shuffled 3 Jade Idols in, so there's that. There's also, Wraths, and you mentioned one of those Innervates still, so that's a good at least third of his deck that he could hit, but maybe he doesn't feel like he wants to go in on that just yet because he still has guaranteed Jades this turn. Looks like he's just as indecisive as we are at this point. I mean, Jade Behemoth, I can't really go wrong with building a big board. This is not really necessarily a board that you're unhappy with, because it still kind of warrants a brawls to a certain extent. But at the same time, you know that your opponent couldn't deal with Auctioneer the previous turn, maybe you can't deal with it this turn.
Well, there's an Execute for Fr0zen, so he can potentially deal with his Auctioneer now in a variety of ways.
Yeah, I wonder if Fr0zen gets greedy too, because he also just saw that his opponent played Jade Behemoth, so maybe okay, maybe I can leave that Auctioneer up. It's an interesting dynamic there with how greedy some players choose to take in their lines.
Well, it really makes Fr0zen think about, okay, what's the content of Damon's hand that he just played 6-drop Go when he had an Auctioneer in play in this matchup?
With so many cards.
And, right, he has so many cards, he has to imagine that this is just a bunch of minions or a bunch of expensive spells. So, okay, well, given that I think that my opponent's hand likely includes cards like Primordial Drake, how do I navigate this turn in order to give myself the best shot of coming out ahead? And I think that he still has to really respect the Auctioneer, though, because if he just leaves the Auctioneer up, it just can really get away with him if Damon just at any point draws a Jade Idol that can really get that chain going.
I like it. Shield bearer.
Yeah, and this is a recognition of what matters in this matchup. And what matters is getting your quest online and getting it going. He just wants the cheap minion to enable his ability to get Sulfuras online as quickly as possible, because the rest of his hand is already very powerful minions.
I mean, he had a cheap taunt already with the dirty rat, but I guess he didn't, that also could be provoking some trouble because he knows so many heavy minions are in there.
Right. Given what he can deduce about Damon's hand from the previous turn, he doesn't want to play dirty rat and have just a giant primordial drake come down and really mess up his ability to get any good attacks in.
Yeah, well, Damon's gonna draw cards, apparently. I think he wants to hit his Jade Idols pretty handily, play more Jades and kind of pressure the board, because it's not like Fr0zen's threatening. And he also is aware that Fr0zen's setting up for the Sulfuras, because he's at 6 out of 7 and a Curator Wisp-Blade, so he's pretty much guaranteed to hit the quest at this point.
And no Jade Idols picked up for Damon.
Huh.
His deck is now 3 Jade Idols among 11 cards. And now it does give the opportunity to make another Jade here. Damon can clear off one of his minions. But now Fr0zen is going to be able to get his Sulfuras online next turn in a situation where he actually has a reasonable board presence as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm not sure about what Damon just did, and it's something that he may have factored, or maybe something he was not focused on, is the fact that the Sulfuras, the weapon, also helps clear the board.
Right.
And he kind of set up a really nice target for it with specifically the 2/3 Jade Spirit. He didn't set up a taunt. He has 2 Primordial Drakes. He has the Curator. All things that can help get in the way and stop that. I think maybe he did some calculations on combat math and said no matter what, he's going to be able to get some good value trades and start getting really good stuff from the hero power. But Fr0zen relatively safe here, and he's escaped, and now he's got some pretty nice ways to combo stuff. Like he's got Primordial Drake Sleep with the Fishes, or Whirlwind Sleep with the Fishes, and then play like a slightly cheaper taunt. I think he's going to be in a good spot from this point.
Though crucially, Damon's Jades, his next Jade is going to be 6/6. So Primordial Drake plus Sleep with the Fishes doesn't actually remove the Jades by itself.
Okay.
You need to actually have some additional board presence in order to combine with that damage.
And you can't hero power anyways. This is what you want to do every single turn.
And I think Fr0zen, trying to figure out exactly how he wants to navigate this. So
Yep.
he can. Yeah, he's just going to go ahead and trade things off. Fire off the Sulfuras hero power.
Definitely wants to snipe the minion here.
He does.
Okay. Pretty happy about that, so he can keep his taunts alive. And I think, one of the funny things to consider is that there's Shield Bearer or Public Defender. Never been to 0/7.
Yeah.
And he had 1 more mana available for this turn. So it's just a little cute thing to note there. Damon picks up another Jade Spirit. He can start clearing more of the board here. I think he's got to find some way to get cards out of his hand. He's got to Innervate to help use up to 12 mana. I've been looking at those Primordial Drakes for a long time. When's he going to use it?
Right now, apparently.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was kind of a rhetorical question at that point. But
yeah, now Damon really needs to start generating significant wide boards each turn. Just one thing is not going to cut it, because he does run the risk of just losing anything he plays to the hero power. So he needs to present multiple threats every turn. Yeah, Fr0zen fires away. That's the worst hit, other than face at this point. So he only takes down the Jade Spirit, which is going to mean that Damon is able to actually establish a meaningful board presence. But there are, those small taunt minions are kind of getting in the way and soaking up potentially hits from these big minions on Damon's side of the board.
yeah, I don't even think Fr0zen's that disappointed in hitting face either, because he does need to win the game. It's
true.
Actually, too. And the more you start pressuring your opponent's life total, the worse position they tend to be. But we do know that Jade Druid is so good at getting life these days. They have the Feral Rage, they have the Earthen Scales, and they also have taunts to kind of get in the way to help artificially inflate their life total.
Well, this is another Auctioneer turn, finds a Jade Idol. So I think we're probably going to see Damon, now that he needs to generate this board presence each turn, I think that he is going to very likely just get the minion off of this. No, he's shuffling.
Shuffling more Jade Idols. This is a second Auctioneer.
It
He's
is.
also using Nourish as well. You have to be a little bit concerned about card draw. It looks like he's going to draw at least 1 more card. Hits one of the Jade Idols, one of the 6 in his, or 5 in his deck at this point. I mean, Damon's deck is pretty much just Jade Idols plus a couple other filler cards that he doesn't really care about. And, absolutely want to be able to play this Jade Idol at this point. I think Damon's also trying to balance against Brawl as a possibility. Has to be kind of concerned about that, knowing that his opponent could potentially sweep the board and then start hero powering the face.
Yeah, Fr0zen's list crucially includes 2 copies of Brawl. Many of the versions that we've seen recently have followed in Kalento's footsteps, including only 1 copy of Brawl in their deck. But Brawl is one of the best cards once you actually have the hero power online, especially in this matchup, where your opponent is able to continually generate very, very large boards that are difficult for you to deal with otherwise. You know, we mentioned the Primordial Drake Sleep with the Fishes. That's not big enough. That doesn't actually deal with the minions that Damon has in play at this point.
Whirlwind Sleep with the Fishes, though, at least clears a couple of the minions, and then you can use Sulfuras to clear off and then hero power. Or maybe hero power to increase your chances of hitting a minion instead. Kind of depends on how Fr0zen feels like he wants to increase his odds or decrease his odds. He's going to tap the Acolyte first in case he draws another card more fitting for the situation. It looks like he doesn't. He's going to stick with the Fishes. Now, is he going to hero power first, or is he going to attack first with the weapon?
I generally think I like hero powering there first because it makes it more likely that you actually kill a minion. Because if this goes face, it's pretty bad for you. Ultimately, it ends up going well for Fr0zen because he kills the larger minion with the hero power and only expending the 4 health attacking into the smaller one. But now, yeah, Damon is able to keep generating big things.
Well, looks like he's got more Jades.
Yes, and these Jades they're getting very big at this point. You know, Fr0zen, he has the Direhorn Matriarch, 6'9", pretty big, but these Jades are even bigger.
And he's got Fandro to shuffle even more Jades. And at this point, Damon's just going to be drawing a Jade per turn. And I think, you know, you want to try your best to still force your opponent to brawl, but not overextend into it. So right now, Damon's maybe even flirting with the idea of if he should even play Jade Blossom. And I think you kind of have to at this point, or at least play one more Jade, because maybe you can draw a Wild Growth into the Jade item. Yeah, man, these are some really intense turns, because one wrong move could really cost him the board and the tempo. And then Fr0zen can win the board, because he's got this, you know, a pretty beefy minion on board.
Yeah, and this is a 9/9 Jade Golem, which crucially is out of range of the hero power. So Fr0zen just picked up his first Brawl, which has to look pretty appealing on a board of this size, but at the same time, it's not. The boards aren't going to get better for him as the game goes on.
Yeah, Primordial Drake, hero power, sets up so that he can actually snipe the 9/7. If it lands, it goes face, which, you know, again, we kind of mentioned that he's got to kill him eventually. He can't just keep clearing these minions. In fact, that's probably one of the better outcomes here from Fr0zen, outside of sniping one of the biggest minions. Because yes, your minions do survive, but you recognize that your opponent hasn't played any removal spells, so most likely they could remove and then play more Jade Idols.
Yeah, Damon, he has those 2 swipes, which have to look relatively attractive to help him push damage and not lose his board here. Does let him go ahead and take one of these down with a swipe and actually start connecting for really significant damage here.
Yeah, and I like playing a Tar Creep, but the question is if he wants to play one of the Jade Idols too, and because he's down to just 1 Jade a turn at this point, for drawing at least.
The crucial thing is that his Jades are big enough to survive that hit from the hero power, which means that even if he is only able to play the 1 threat, Fr0zen can't just remove his threat very easily. Even if Fr0zen were to, say, Brawl here, and Damon is only able to follow up with a single Jade Idol the next turn, that's still a must-kill threat that the hero power alone does not deal with.
Yeah, and he's supposed to be worried about Dirty Rat Brawl. That's another thing that could deplete more of his hand resources.
And now the next Jade is actually even going to be 11/11, which is out of range of Primordial Drake plus hero power.
Well, Drake does manage to kind of take the hit here for at least one of the Jade hits.
Oh,
Damon picks up Aya Blackpaw. A huge and crucial minion to play at this position because you do not want that to get dirty ratted.
Yeah, well, we were also talking about, you know, he's only drawing 1 Jade a turn. Well, that's not only effectively 2 Jades, but it also gives him tremendous protection from Brawl. Because if Fr0zen brawls and you see just a wince from Fr0zen as Aya comes down, now that Brawl goes from, okay, well, maybe I can clear the board to, at best, I leave a 12/12 in play.
Or does he?
Okay, well, you can punch Aya in the face and then Brawl.
Yeah, we'll see. Double Dirty Rat is what Fr0zen was thinking about originally, but now that the Curie's been pulled out, I wonder if he just wants to brawl immediately here. And he wants his own Dirty Rat to win. It's a 1 in 5 chance. And it looks like the 11-11 survives. This is looking really bad here for Fr0zen. Plays a second Dirty Rat. But
that's just going to be the game. We see Fr0zen concede, and he battled valiantly there, tried to hold off the tide of Jade Golems. But as you mentioned, that's a very tough matchup, and the Jades just got too big too quickly on Damon's side for Fr0zen to be able to really leverage the hero power to actually win the game.
Absolutely, and I think that was just a battle of inevitability. I think the Jade Druid is just going to be able to shut down the Taunt Warrior almost every time from that position, as long as the Jade Druid doesn't overextend. And Damon did a really good job just showing restraint and kind of weighing the options of every single turn. And now we go to the Quest Warrior Mirror, which seems to be a crucial juncture of America's Spring Playoffs specifically because of the representation that we see of Quest Warrior in everyone's lineup.
Yeah, Warrior is the most popular deck here, and Quest Warrior is the more popular version of Warrior in this field.
Yeah, what happened to Pirate Warrior?
I know. I mean, look at Fr0zen's lineup. He's got so many Galactica Crawlers. He's ready for Pirate Warriors,
Yeah.
but everyone's bringing Sulfuras to this party.
Yeah, it's very surprising, and you see only like 15 players brought Pirate Warrior, and it's a stark contrast to some other people bringing a lot of aggro lineups the previous weeks. What happened, do you think?
I think a lot of it was reaction to the Europe results. We saw Aggro Druid was the most popular deck by a lot in the Europe playoffs, and the absolute best deck available against Aggro Druid is Taunt Warrior. And Pirate Warrior tends to actually be an underdog in that matchup. So, if you're looking to have a deck in your lineup that's likely to punish what you think might be the best, or rather the most popular deck, Taunt Warrior is a great inclusion. And it's also a deck that it has tools to win a lot of matchups. Even as we were talking about in the Jade Druid matchup, if things go right for you, if they don't quite get their Jades going fast enough, and you get your quest online, you can end up winning that game regardless. But we are getting into this Quest Warrior Mirror. And there's some crucial differences in these two players' decks. Fr0zen, as we saw in the last game and we see in his hand now, has Dirty Rat in his deck, which actually is not an inclusion in Damon's list. Damon is playing essentially exactly Kalento's list from the championship, or rather the playoff last weekend where he got second place, which includes the Battle Rage to help him accelerate his taunts, and does not include those Dirty Rats, which are effective in some of the other matchups, but can be kind of interesting in this one. The fact that Dirty Rat actually gets a card out of your opponent's hand that often is not actually a large minion. Yeah, Ravaging Ghoul, not what Fr0zen really wanted to hit. Usually with the Dirty Rat in the Quest Warrior Mirror, the best card to hit is actually Stonehill Defender, because you essentially remove 2 of the taunts from your opponent's hand in terms of their quest completion. Because really this matchup is about a race to Sulfuras.
Can't believe Fr0zen Dirty Rat, the only non-top minion in his hand. Hitting any of the Stonehill defenders would have been massive.
Yes.
To stop it too. So a little funny interaction there. Damon probably breathing a sigh of relief.
Yeah, and Fr0zen here, this is a very important game for him, because if he does lose, he is out of this tournament essentially. He'll be at 2 losses, 0-2. At that point, you're not technically eliminated, but you're pretty much eliminated, because your tiebreakers coming from the 0-2 bracket up to 5-2 will be almost never good enough to get you into the top 8.
Yeah, he'll have to hope that both of his opponents that he lost to end up doing really well. So if Damon ended up winning this, Damon would have to go 6-1, and his opponent also have to go 7-0. We'll see though. Damon looks like he's contemplating if he wants to coin out the Stonehill Defender, if he wants to just start getting the taunt trains going. Looks like he's going to save it, try to go for a better curve. And it's interesting because I've seen so many people fight for just getting that quest done super fast. Do you like that, Brian?
I generally in this matchup just try and complete the quest absolutely as fast as possible, because there's 2 things that the matchup is really about. It's about completing your quest and actually having enough life and armor when both players do get to the quest that you're ahead in terms of your ability to win. It is so unlikely you get meaningful minion damage in, because both players are just playing minions with high health, low attack.
Yeah.
And yeah, look at what Fr0zen took there. He took Shield Bear. He had the second-rate Bruiser as well as the Giant Mastodon. Recognizes all I want to do is have the cheapest taunts I can play to get out Sulfuras the fastest.
All right, well, Damon has definitely less than optimal choices here. Cornered Sentry, Faces Shambler. Gonna be a little awkward to pull off some of those combo-centric cards. Shenzhen Shieldmaster, though, pretty solid, and it fits the curve of relative what he wants to do. Then you gotta kind of ask the question, when are you going to be able to squeeze in some of these other cards here? Like, when does the second Stonehill Defender come out, if needed? I mean, maybe Damon just wants to follow this curve into a very nice 3, 4, 5, play Stonehill on 6, maybe get something else, and then coin 7 for the Primordial Drake, and now complete his quest.
Yep, Fr0zen picks up another Stonehill Defender, which is one of the absolute best cards in this matchup because it does accelerate you doubly toward your quest. He does have the Tar Creeper in hand as well that he could play this turn, as well as the Shield Bearer. if he just wants to go in with these.
I think I like Stonehill Defender a little bit better because it can maybe get you the guaranteed curve to play on 5, so then you can save Tar Creeper to fit in later. You know, the general theory of mana resource is that if you play the more expensive thing, you can always fit in things that pair a little bit better. This is interesting. Fr0zen chooses to play for Acolyte instead, trying to get value off of the Acolyte before his opponent can get rid of that Stonehill Defender.
Yeah, I think that Fr0zen's taunts are cheap enough that he doesn't feel like he's going to be under mana pressure in order to actually get them down and be able to complete his quest in time. This is an opportunity that he can generate value off of this Acolyte, which he may not find again. If that Stonehill Defender does die, he may just be running into the larger taunts that he's not able to actually just get free attacks into for cards.
Interesting, interesting. Damon not going with the Ascension Shield Master either, choosing for another Stonehill Defender, recognizing that he can't really stop the card draw anyways, and that he's going to have to figure out a better way to utilize some of his curve later on. Introduced with another Armorsmith or Ornery Direhorn. That's a 6-mana 5/5 taunt. When you play it, you can adapt it. And that card has actually stopped seeing play largely across all taunt warriors. Why do you think that is, Brian?
There's a couple of reasons. One, because it's a beast, it interferes with your Curator's ability to guarantee you Direhorn Matriarch after you've played the Direhorn Hatchling. And 2, it costs 6 mana. We were talking about how it's often important to race out to your quest. The fact that the Direhorn costs, Ornery Direhorn costs 6 mana means you can't play it and Sulphur Us and use your hero power in one turn. That's 11 total mana.
Assuming you don't have the coin, but yes.
Or your Twitch chat.
Or your That's right, you can't do anything on infinite mana, you're right. Fr0zen picks up another way to draw even more cards with the Ravaging Ghoul. He's gonna draw first the Acolyte, see what happens. Fiery War Axe can help clean up the board too. I mean, Fr0zen's feeling pretty greedy here, just wants to draw even more cards. And he feels like because he has the ability to draw more cards, he can always, and as soon as he picks up really powerful things like Executed Brawl, he should be able to come back to the board, even if his opponent's gonna play really powerful stuff off the Stonehill Defender draws.
Yeah, Fr0zen, he has a lot of efficient cards here, which is, really valuable in terms of actually getting to that quest completion. He's, putting Damon in a position.
Oh, I like this a lot. He's choosing not to attack to play around Battle Rage.
Yes.
It might look like he missed a damage, but he chose not to attack, which is something that people usually don't think about. Because like, yeah, getting that 1 damage, every damage matters. But he's trying to shut off Damon's draw, which looks like, when Damon plays double Stonehill Defender, especially one off curve, and when he saved the coin, it could show that he's desperate. He's got a lot of heavy, expensive taunts, and Fr0zen wants to shut off any form of card draw resource.
Yeah, and Fr0zen, looking at his curve, next turn on 6 mana, he does have the ability to potentially play a Creeper plus Stonehill, put himself at 4 on the quest, and then getting another taunt. He can very easily just have enough resources to complete his quest in just the next couple of turns.
Yeah.
Another taunt picked up.
And it's like you said, Brian, it's not just necessarily about completing the quest, it's also about making sure that you have the resource to back it up. If you play the quest and you have 2 cards in your hand and you have 19 health remaining in the game, that's actually still a pretty bad spot because your opponent can also finish the quest reasonably and then out-resource you and then push for lethal. Gotta be careful, you can't just rush things haphazardly.
Yeah, Fr0zen definitely navigating, taking his time here.
Doesn't even mind building up the armor, that means he can't draw with Battle Rage.
True.
Gave him 6 armor willingly.
Gives him the clean trade of the Acolyte into the Ravaging Ghoul. And now, I think we're going to see the taunts start to come down once again. And Fr0zen also knows. Look at this, the Goldshire Footman. He is just setting up the cheap taunts to activate his quest and get that Sulphur Us down as fast as possible.
That's right, Goldshire Footman. You stare back at us with dignity today. I mean, people kind of make fun of these cards all the time. They're saying, like, I can't believe these cards are the ones that you, like, devolve into or, like, you get off of, like, those random card generations. But in this case, it's actually really useful. You can play both of those so cheap and get the quest in the next couple turns, even as soon as next turn.
Yeah, you can complete his quest next turn with Dire Horn into both 1-drops. And that gives him the ability to play the Sulfuros plus Hero Power plus Shield Blocker Tar Creeper the following turn. So it's just the efficiency of those taunts and just ramping you out to the completion of the quest is so much more powerful in this matchup simply because so many of your cards frankly feel like they don't matter. They're just there to accelerate you to that Sulfuros.
All right, well, Damon just plays the Alloy Armor Smith. He's just playing on the 1 minion per turn plan, and Fr0zen is clearly pivoting to going for a big swarm. But if he plays the Shield Bearer, Goldshire Footman, and another taunt here, you should be able to finish the quest. I think he's trying to weigh what his opponent can do in response to him. Maybe he wants to. Like, he has to be mindful of the fact that Primordial Drake can be coined out next turn. He also has to make sure that he's not setting himself up for easy clear with Sleep with the Fishes. So I think both of those involve playing the Direhorn Hatchling because it's got a lot of health. So I think that's kind of a baseline maneuver there. And if he wants to save the Goldshire Footman and Shield Bearer for next turn, because he can squeeze both those in, Sulfuros and Hero Power, I'd be okay with that.
He is going to go ahead and play the double 1-drop taunts. A little bit of a grin from Fr0zen there.
Ready for action.
Yeah, ready for Sulfuros.
Yeah.
What Fr0zen is.
I mean, he's kind of like an unsung hero. Him and Shield Bearer both along. Somewhere in the world, Raynad's sneezing right now. Another Primordial Drake being picked up. And Damon has no brawls. This is another thing that Fr0zen's also playing into. Damon only has 1 brawl in his control, or into his taunt warrior list right here. So he has no ability to control the board with 1 card. He has to piece together some removal. He's got Sleep with the Fishes, and that should be able to deal with most things here. But if he's doing Sleep with the Fishes, he can't develop as strong of a minion that he's like, and he's still really far away from completing his quest.
Yeah, the big issue for Damon here is the board isn't his problem. The Sulfuros is the problem. The fact that Fr0zen is going to start throwing 8 damage fireballs every turn is what's really going to put him in an awkward position.
Yeah, and it also just conveniently lines up to remove the Armor Smith as well. Fr0zen looks like he's going to Hero Power first. Just get that extra armor value. You never know if the 2 health will really come down to it. Let's see what ends up happening. Looks like he missed based off his immediate reaction.
Yeah, he was dragging his minions to see if he could attack face. He could not, which meant the Primordial Drake survived. It's interesting the little shortcuts that players will use to take advantage of the fact that they have limited time to think, limited time to actually execute.
That's right.
So you need to know, okay, well, if I drag this over this, even things like after you cast like a spell that has a random effect, you can drag your minions to your opponent's minions, and if a skull appears, you know how many of the random damage.
Yeah, Lightning Storm, for example. You look at the end turn button if it's yellow or green. Small tips like that can help you improve your speed of calculation. Damon plays the Ornery Direhorn. Looks like he's got the adapt for Wind, Fury, Health, or can't be targeted. If it's Health, it'd be at 8 health, I believe. So it's still vulnerable to attacks. But the nice thing about Liquid Membrane is that it can't be executed. So maybe he wants the stickiest minion possible here.
None of these are frankly super exciting. What he most like here is something like the Death Rattle, giving you plants to prevent the hero power from connecting with your face or from your larger minions if your minion does die. But it is pretty good with the can't be targeted attack.
Nice. Yeah, that or Divine Shield could also be pretty useful too. Granted that your opponent can probably clear that, but any kind of way to make the Ragnaros hero power a little bit more complicated is A-OK in my book. Fr0zen picks up Bloodhoof Braves. That gives him kind of some minions to play behind this hero power, but I think Fr0zen is going to calculate if he wants to use his Brawl here first. You do know that your opponent's playing pretty much 1 or 2 minions per turn, so you're not really going to get many more value than just 1 Brawl. It's like that Drake just doesn't want to die.
Going face is actually pretty rough here for Fr0zen because it does mean that there's an uncontested, pretty big minion here for him to deal with. And if Damon's able to set up additional minions, he's able to just keep connecting with Fr0zen's face because Fr0zen is unable to continue gaining armor. He switched out his hero power now. And now this is the completion of the quest for Damon.
Yeah.
So he's going to be able to start getting the pressure on.
Oh boy.
And that's a problem for Fr0zen because he is now behind several minions, and now he's the one who is at less life.
Oh wow, and Damon's not even attacking. He's still a little bit cautious here. Fr0zen looking for any way to stabilize that whirlwind and sleep with the fishes is just a little bit off. Did Fr0zen pull the trigger a little bit too quickly on that brawl? He kind of put himself in this position. Finally, the Drake goes down. But it looks like Damon's going to be the one pushing damage and being in charge in this spot.
Yeah, Damon has he can guarantee 8 to the face here if he does just attack into the Bloodhoof and take it down. He can even just attack with his face Primordial Drake, taking it down and guaranteeing the 8 to the face with the hero power as well.
What now?
But the thing is, Tar Creeper's not exactly very strong. Maybe you don't care about that, the fact that your Tar Creeper's not that imposing of a minion, because you just want to get in a position to set up a 2-turn lethal here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you use your weapon and your 3/5 taunt to get past it, you should be able to set up a really strong board. Oh, looks like he's going to execute this as well.
And this also gives him the ability to set up even more minions to make it even less likely Fr0zen's able to win the game with the Ragnar's hero power.
Although it does set him up, it does set Fr0zen up for a potential way to clear the board.
Yeah, but he's at
Drake
he's at 2 life against the Ragnar's hero power and the weapon. So if he does Primordial Drake sleep with the fishes, any result from the hero power ends up winning the game.
Yeah, but Ravaging Ghoul means that he can Ravaging Ghoul Whirlwind, sleep with the fishes.
It's true.
Play Tar Creeper and survive.
All right, this is not yet over. That was a very big draw from Fr0zen here at just 2 life. He cannot use his Ragnar's hero power, though. He does not have quite enough mana, which does mean he's just behind in this race still. This is going to be it.
Yeah, should be able to clear it anyways because he's got the sleep with the fishes and the hero power with the weapon. So Damon's going to take the series 3-2, winning the crucial and deciding Game 5 Taunt Warrior Mirror. And Fr0zen down 0-2, looking like he might be eliminated here.
Yeah, definitely rough tournament for the runner-up from the Winter Championship. But, as we've said a number of times, he's already qualified for the World Championship. He'd love to go to Shanghai.
Yeah.
But he's already made his mark so far this year.
There's a little bit of a curse that goes on, and maybe it's also somewhat self-imposed by the players because they do cite a lack of motivation directly, usually after having qualified for the World Championship. They feel like it's a little bit easier for them to let up. Fr0zen said he's taking up golf with his time. He's not actually even playing as much Hearthstone as he is compared to prior to the Winter Championships. Admirable was telling me that Fr0zen for a year was playing the most out of anybody he knew, and Admirable talks to almost every player out there on the pro circuit. So you can tell that how much time Fr0zen's put in, and he's saying that he's taking it easy. I wouldn't put too much stock in this loss.
Yeah, he's obviously a very strong player. We've seen him have tons of success over years now. And I think he'll have it together at least by the World Championship.
That's right, that's right. Now, of course, that's just one match out of dozens